In early April 2017, several hundred environmental planners, policymakers, academics and politicians gathered together in Orvieto, Italy. Over 4 days they discussed the important role that the living landscape and particularly the trees in the urban forest can play in improving the quality of urban life. More than half the people in the world now live in towns and cities, and for most of us, the urban environment is becoming more challenging. The impacts of climate change, the urban heat island effect, the problems of pollution and flooding all have negative effects on human health and well-being. The conference in Orvieto highlighted the role that urban green infrastructure needs to play in cooling the air, filtering pollution, absorbing stormwater, encouraging healthy outdoor exercise, and making contact with nature a part of everyday life. These ecosystem services are extremely valuable and relatively inexpensive to deliver. But nature-based solutions require cooperation across a wide range of professions, integrated policy making and popular support. Strengthening and increasing green infrastructure can undoubtedly make our towns and cities more resilient and our lifestyles more sustainable. But there's an urgent need for fresh thinking and for positive action. This was made clear by the comments of just a few of the opinion leaders from around the world who contributed to the 2017 Orvieto Conference.
We are discussing in these days in Orvieto how the different countries cope with that, the different approaches. Even beyond Europe, we have representatives also from North America, South America, Asia, Australia, even from Africa. And that is just in the new concept by European Commission to put together different categories, different stakeholders to work on the sustainability of the cities. So that's basically the approach, multi-benefit approach, and also multi-community approach that we are going to have here.
Across Europe, there are many cities that they are front runners in deploying green policies space. For example, we have Bristol in UK, we have Manchester in UK, Barcelona, we have Copenhagen, Berlin. There is a very long list of policies. I think that will be unfair to some of the cities. But there are many good examples where this type of greening, renaturing of the cities has been deployed, and their citizens, they are living very high quality of life.
It is important for people to have green, but it is important to have more green infrastructure. We need it. We need for the effect that they can have in our lives, and especially I think it is a key issue even for help fragility people, fragile people. I mean, there are lots of people that present fragility as a condition. So I'm thinking to aging population or child.
Very many of those big trees are at risk. They're at risk from insurance claims, they're at risk from engineers who want to tunnel through their roots, and one way or another we're seeing many of the big trees in our cities either disappear completely or get trimmed back, and so that they don't function nearly so well. So hanging on to the best of the natural resources is a really important place to begin.
We live in an interesting era. Austerity has been around now since 2008. Public finance is under pressure like at no time since 1945, and we can no longer rely entirely on the public sector. Effectively, I think funding has to come from all of the recognised sectors of civil society, whether that be local government, central government of course, but also the private sector, and also direct citizen contributions through new initiatives such as crowdfunding, and through the money that's made available through donations to NGOs, for example. They all have key roles to play, and I suspect the role of the private sector and of NGOs is going to be a major feature over the next 10 years.
These big changes happen when you have individuals who are determined, who are ambitious, who are relentless, and who gather people around them who believe in them and will try and effect change. And so a lot of it is actually about how you change minds and you change institutional practices. And that takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of effort. But I think the evidence is there around us in places where those sorts of people are supported. And it's that idea of changing the culture so that they begin to say, that's a good idea, yes, we'll go with it, rather than saying, yes, but we can't do it. So it's giving people the confidence and the ambition to know that they can go forward with something that's different. And that I think is the key to making change.
We've been educated based on industrial civilization about what is beautiful, what is ugly. But now we say we have a new aesthetics, with new values, which we have to treat, for example, water differently. For example, before we appreciate ornamental flowers, before we appreciate ornamental dogs, ornamental fish, now we say that they are not healthy. We need a better solution, which means we need to appreciate native grass, messy grass, messy vegetation. We need to appreciate the native species instead of all those ornamental dogs, fishes, animals, pets. We have to go back to nature, to let nature to do the work.
The question I always get when I talk about green infrastructure with politicians or planners is, who is going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for all this green space in our city? Well, then I can answer. There's actually many examples of how green infrastructure can generate economic benefits, and cities will actually recuperate a lot of those costs. For example, by not having to put in very extensive engineering solutions to stormwater reduction or climate change adaptation. And also, not in the least, of course, by saving a lot on our public health costs. Education is another issue where we really can use green spaces to educate our children, rather than maybe seeing them get what some people have called the nature deficit disorder because of loss of contact with nature.
How does socioeconomic position in a society bear on a person's health? We could ask similar kinds of questions of nature and health. So for whom, when, under what circumstances, what kind of nature? How do we understand this? What kind of study designs do we need to use? Longitudinal designs. Experimental studies concerned with basic mechanisms, longitudinal studies that follow people through the life course, through a developmental trajectory. There are many different kinds of study designs that we could think of that are needed to address particular kinds of questions.
I would say that in 20 or 30 years, green infrastructure will be more of a part of infrastructure, what we think of as infrastructure. It won't be green or blue or gray. It will be a sort of integrated solution that implements some elements of nature, some elements of technology, and sort of blends those in ability to actually accomplish the solutions that we're looking for.
Vulnerable to these types of changes. Last week in Mocoa, in Colombia, over 300 people were killed, probably as a combination of not only climate change, but poor land management practices, deforestation. So all these factors really play a role in these vulnerable communities.
The understanding of nature and the roles of nature and air quality amongst other professionals is likely increased in the last 20 years as the science has gotten better. But we need to move forward, not so much in the science, because we have a good understanding of the physics, so there's still more to learn there. It's more about getting the education out to the other professionals, because certain professions are trained within the history of how they're trained. So as we get new information, this new information needs to make its way into that professional society to understand that there are different ways of doing things that incorporate nature to help improve air quality.